The watch I was not supposed to have ticked on my kitchen counter, still wet with salt. It was Derek's, a glossy diver's model I had pried off the railing after I climbed the swim ladder in the dark. The second hand stuttered, then steadied, like it remembered how to keep time without him. I dried it with a tea towel, set it beside my laptop, and pressed play on the stern camera file I was not supposed to possess. The white wake curled behind the yacht, our daughter's laughter floated from the upper deck, and then his hand entered frame at my shoulder, easy as moving a curtain. The sky turned. I swallowed seawater in my kitchen. How do you make a man meet the truth in his own house when he thinks you drowned? Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you're hooked already, a like and subscribe will keep these stories coming. Wednesday, 23:10, Coral Gables. The house was quiet except for the printer warming up and the freezer humming. I kept one light over the sink. The rest stayed dark so I could see screens without my reflection. The folder was named Receipts, same name Derek used for his photo folder of deep-sea fish. Men like him think hiding in plain sight is clever. The transfer outflows sat in a plain spreadsheet, 12 tabs, 12 jurisdictions, and a tidy total just under $3 billion that matched the balance column in our foundation's custodial account by Friday last week. He had set my login to a guest view at the gala 2 nights before, smiled, and said, "Transparency is everything, Evelyn." He had said my name like I was a soft fruit that bruised easily. The printer spat out the Cayman wire confirmations and the calendar invite labeled Harbor Run. The invite had 3 names other than mine, Derek, his partner Jasper, and the captain Marta. I circled times with a pencil. I didn't press hard. I never do. If I stayed silent, the money would pour through more pipes at dawn and reappear someplace a court could not see. If I moved loud or soon, they would call it grief or confusion or a family disagreement while they finished the last sweep. It was my grandson's school wing with our name on it. It was the trust my husband and I built from scratch, a promise that his 10 years fighting sarcoma meant something beyond photographs. It was my ordinary face in a community that thinks ordinary means naive. It was the small orange leather notebook in my purse with passwords written without vowels, the one I never left at home. And it was our daughter's voice in my head saying, "Mom, you hate boats, don't come, it's just a little cruise." Tuesday, 1930, Biscayne Bay. The sky was flat and pink like a new scar. The yacht glided toward the channel markers. Someone had ironed the napkins with navy borders. The captain's shoes squeaked once, then settled. At the bar, Lena whispered to Derek and glanced at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I told her we'd be quick," she said lightly, and the bartender pretended not to hear. I watched a woman in a silver dress take a selfie with our stern flag in the corner. "You look beautiful," I told my daughter, because she did, because the dress fit her like she believed in herself. "You didn't have to come," she said. "You hate the way diesel smells." I said nothing. I reached for a napkin and folded it again. Later, when he steered me toward the rail and thanked me for trusting him with the foundation, his hand was warm through my linen sleeve. The ocean doesn't feel cold until it does. The white hull slid by above me like a cloud I could not reach. I kicked shoes off underwater, turned toward the ladder, and swam out of sight of the glass. They did not yell man overboard. They did not cut the engines. Someone laughed, and I heard it clean under the water the way you hear trains from half a town away after midnight. Wednesday, 0:40, Coral Gables. I set a kettle on, then turned it off before it boiled. I flipped the camera file to the one from the salon. Sound only, people talking about menus and escrow. A single line floated bright as bait, "She still won't sign the back-end letter, but Jasper will, and that's just as good." That was Jasper's voice, lazy with whiskey. "We finish the night, get her to bed, transfer at 5. "She can't swim," someone said. A woman. Not my daughter. The woman laughed like the sentence was a garnish on a drink. That laugh told me more than any confession could. The printer coughed again. The house smelled faintly of rain from the storm that just passed over Coconut Grove. I opened the freezer and took out an ice pack I did not need, because my body wanted to hold something cold that would not keep me awake. Monday, 9:15, my study. An invoice for 8 satellite phones with no clear shipper. A dinner place card from the gala with my name spelled correctly on one side and a small grease stain on the other. A medallion signature guarantee request for an account I never open without my attorney present, printed and signed, tucked under a file of school newsletters with my grandson's photo holding a paper rocket. An overheard line from the charity auction: we change the board, formalize the offshore pledge, present it as nimbleness. And from our driver Reuben, the quiet sentence when he opened my door at the valet line: Mrs. Hart, Mr. Lowell asked me to drop him and Ms. Lena at Pier 4 before going back for you. Did you want me to wait? I told him yes. He waited. He always waits. The slap came 10 minutes after I told Lena I would not sign the back-end letter. The backstage hallway of the gala smelled like perfume, floor wax, and sautéed garlic from the banquet kitchen. She held the paper with the glowing logo high in her hand like I had made her lift weights. It's routine, she said. It lets the fund be flexible. Jasper said. Derek promised. She was talking fast the way she did when she felt her throat tighten. I will meet the main obligation in the morning, I said. This letter lets you move any sum you want before the public filing. It is still us, she said. Us. And then she slapped me. Not a showy hit. Not a slap for cameras. A quick, flat contact that hurt because she was so close. Her palm met my cheek with a neat sound, and then the quiet afterward rang louder than the dinner band. A caterer paused mid-stride holding a tray. A board member's wife gasped, then pretended she hadn't. My glasses slipped. I kept my balance and set my fingertips on the wall. You do not get to be the gate, she said through her teeth. You were never the gate. She looked shocked at her own words, like a sentence she had practiced in a mirror had come out wrong. Something changed on both our faces. We would not pretend trust again after that hallway. The paper fluttered down and slid under a side table. I picked it up and put it in my bag. I took the back-end letter to my attorney in Brickell at daybreak and filed for a temporary restraining order to freeze the accounts tied to that language. I called the Foundation's custodian and submitted a trustee motion to suspend Derek's signatory privileges under the bad actor clause my husband and I wrote the night we signed our first $1 million donor check. The clause did not say attempted murder. It said actions that materially threaten the plenary integrity of the corpus. Lawyers like words like that, so no one has to say the ugliest ones out loud. I walked into our bank manager's office and showed him the transfers. He put on his reading glasses, read the totals, and closed his eyes for one careful second. Then he called security. Security meant a bald man in a navy jacket with a spiral cord in his ear who said nothing and stood in the hallway like a wall. We filed incident notices with timestamps. We requested a receivership hearing for Friday at 9. I wrote the time in my orange notebook without vowels, underlined twice. Receivership Friday 9. I asked Reuben to drive me to Key Largo for one night. He did not ask why. When I stepped out, he put a small umbrella in my hand. It will rain, he said, quiet as always. I will be here at 6 tomorrow morning. The judge had a conflict and moved the hearing to 11. The bank's compliance officer said the freeze could only hold 48 hours without the court's order. The first TRO petition we submitted had a missing exhibit, and the host court stamped it returned for correction at 10:05 while I sat outside with coffee I could not taste. I texted my attorney twice and set the phone face down to stop looking. The stern camera file, once a sword in my hand, blurred when you zoomed. You could see the shift, you could see the white rail, you could hear the laugh, but if you wanted a courtroom to name a push, you got a shrug and a frown and a reminder of water. It shows risk, my attorney said softly. It shows negligent disregard. It doesn't show intent to harm. We do not need intent to harm for a receivership, but they will say it was an accident and the video is inconclusive. He looked up. We need something impossible to misread. Rain packing happened in a motel with a broken ice machine in Key Largo on Thursday at 3:40. A sheet of cold rain swept sideways across the balcony so hard it pushed the air conditioner's smell into the room. The floor was damp near the door. I opened my suitcase on the bed and listened to the steady drum of water on the metal stair outside. I took out 2 shirts, folded them tighter, and put one back. I laid a ticket stub from the gala at the top of the case and then slid it under the lining because it looked like a reason I did not want to show anyone. I placed the dead phone I had carried since the yacht in the side pocket, a square weight that felt like a lost tooth in a child's hand. My husband's ring stayed in its box. I held it like I was warming a stone and put it in the hotel safe with the same care I used to set down a sleeping baby. 2 key copies went in a small envelope labeled Back Gate and Boathouse. I left behind a yellow scarf that still smelled like our granddaughter's hair after swim class. I took the orange notebook, 2 thumb drives on a red lanyard, and a small bar of hotel soap that smelled like limes. The water in the parking lot reached my ankles when I stepped out. Rain has a weight when it chooses you. It flattened my hair. It washed the chalk off my shoes. It beat time on the hood of Ruben's car, and he turned on the wipers, and neither of us spoke because the sound filled everything and said move. Turn, Thursday, 7:10, Marina office. Marta, the captain, waited in a faded blue windbreaker with the logo half peeled. She had a styrofoam cup of coffee and a face like tide lines drawn across a map. You were not supposed to survive, she said, no adornment. I thought you knew how to swim. I learned at 50, I said, after my husband died. I liked the feeling of doing something late. She looked at me for a long second, then took a small plastic case from her pocket and set it on the desk. It was a micro SD card inside a bag number from a big box store. There are 2 stern cameras, she said. Derek likes redundancy. He told me to format both every other week, and I did, but I copied last night because he was nervous, and nervous people make me careful. I didn't reach for the card yet because reaching shows more than waiting. Why bring it to me? I asked. Because Jasper told him to push you after midnight when there were fewer boats, and I do not take orders like that more than once, she said. Because I watched your daughter rehearse a smile and then forget it when she turned away. Because I like you better than them and I can live with the look my face makes in the mirror tomorrow only if I do this. What will you say when they ask? I said. That the weather was rough, she said lightly, and then she did smile, small and tired. And then I will show them the card. She closed my hand around the bag. Don't break it. On the second camera, the angle held us in a tight box where the first showed only horizon. Derek's hand did not look like a push. It looked like help, the way a stranger steadies you on a bus. But his fingers spread and pressed, and his wrist rolled, and my body moved just enough to say choice. He did not reach for me after my balance tipped. He looked to his right and nodded once, and in the reflection in the polished hatch I watched my daughter turn away and lift her glass. Evidence works because it shows what language hides. I printed still frames and set them in a line on the counter, 6 little photographs of a truth that managed without opinion. No plan survives first contact, but mine liked paper and clocks. I moved my 11 o'clock receivership hearing to the large courtroom because the smaller one had a water leak. I asked the clerk for a whiteboard because some people only understand money when you draw boxes. I put Marta on standby without telling her, then cleared Ruben to bring my grandson to his school interview because the world does not pause its good things. I ate half a banana in the car and threw the peel away before it could rot and make the car smell like warm fruit. I called the locksmith and scheduled a noon lock change at the Coral Gables house. It is your deed, he said. I don't need a judge. I know, I said. Show up quietly anyway. I texted the bank. Hold firm until noon. I printed letters, one for the police detailing the yacht incident, one for the foundation board summarizing the compliant actions we would take before the press release, one for my daughter with nothing but a single line, we can stop this before you break your own name. At 10:20 the compliance officer called to say Jasper had walked into his office with a smiling lawyer none of us recognized, filed a provisional pledge that would make any freeze look like a misunderstanding, and asked for coffee. He said this is a governance conversation, the officer said. He used the word agile. Words are not governance, I said. Hold. At 10:42, my attorney texted that our judge had been assigned a late emergency custody case and might push us to one. We will wait, I replied. At 11:03, the building's fire alarm rang for a test none of us had been told about, and for 3 minutes the hallway filled with people and static and the smell of burnt dust from vents that had not been used in months. I sat with my hands flat on my orange notebook and breathed while the sound shook the windows. And when it stopped, the corridor looked new even though nothing had changed. We entered court at 11:20. I told the clerk I'd like the whiteboard. The judge glanced up. She had hair like a woman who did not have time for it. She read my petition. She looked at the stills without touching them. We are not trying a crime, she said even before I could say we were not. We are deciding whether the fund's assets require extraordinary relief. She watched me. Explain why you filed ex parte. Because any delay would permit a transfer that cannot be clawed back, I said. Because they are moving tonight. Because I have not called the press. Because this courtroom is where ugly things become tidy. She nodded once, then looked at Derek's counsel and Jasper's counsel, men who smelled faintly of talc and worn leather and whose cufflinks caught light like coins. "Counsel," she said. They said predictable things about misunderstandings and strong families. They called me emotional and then quickly called me practical when the first word hung wrong in the air. The judge granted my receivership on the record at 11:58 and signed the order at 12:03. "Mrs. Hart," she said, eyes level. "Do this quietly. Do it clean." "I understand," I said. She knew I did. I drove home without the radio. The locksmith's van was already in the driveway. He held a small plastic bag with the old deadbolt cylinder and grinned like he was handing me a tooth. The kitchen smelled like coffee grounds and lemon cleaner and something else, a smell like rain that follows you indoors. I lined the still frames up on the island, 6 truths in a row. I put Derek's wet watch in a small bowl. I opened the drawer where we keep the good scissors and took them out because I knew I would need them for something I could not name yet. I reached for my tea and knocked a porcelain saucer against the underside of a shelf. It shifted and something thin fell into the cutlery tray with a sound like a coin. I pulled the drawer farther. An envelope lay face down on the knives. My name on the back in my daughter's handwriting. Inside, a thumb drive and a single post-it in her tight print. "It is not what you think. Do not let him see you shake." I held the drive between my fingers for a beat longer than needed, so I would not plug it in with what my face was doing. The kitchen clock turned 13:10. I closed the curtains, not because I was afraid of someone watching, but because I wanted the room to feel like a room where decisions do not need neighbors. The drive had a scratch near the end where a key ring might have been. I pushed it into my laptop and waited for the name to load. It appeared as school forms. I laughed once without sound. I opened it. The first file was a spreadsheet named Donors 2020 to 2025, with fake contact numbers that turned into ledger codes if you removed all zeros. My daughter had always liked puzzles you could do at the breakfast table. The second file was a batch of voice memos. I clicked the one labeled, Tour's dress fitting. The sound of pins tapping a wooden floor, a zipper sliding, a woman saying hold breath. Then Derek's voice, "Too near the mic, your mother will sign, Lena. She likes being the person who says yes last. Let her have that." "She won't," my daughter said. You could hear her lift her arms and then lower them. "She will make me walk out empty-handed in front of everyone and say it is love." He laughed softly. "You think love is a meeting?" "I think love is a door that opens when I'm late," she said, and something broke in that sentence when I heard it because I knew that door had not opened often enough. "Don't be poetic," he said. "For this, we need math." She did not answer. A pin clicked. "If something happens," she said at last, "do not pretend it was weather." "We are professionals," he said. "Weather looks good." I clicked the memo labeled, Jasper Office. Keyboard keys, a glass set down. "She has the kids," Jasper said. "She will weaponize that if you make her angry." "She will not know we moved anything until after," Derek said. "If she cries, I will hold her hair back." He laughed at his own line. I looked at the wall until my breathing matched the tick of the kitchen clock. I clicked the last memo labeled, Marta Dock. Boots on wood, gulls, water slapping pilings. "If you want me to drive you ashore after, bring someone else," Marta said. "I drive boats, not stories." A beat. "We won't need you," Derek said. "She is old." "You are young," Marta said evenly. "Both facts mean less than you think." Footsteps. "Pay cash," Jasper said. A small envelope crinkled. Someone walked away. You could hear on the recording that the person leaving did not look back. My daughter, who had slapped me in a hallway because she wanted to be a door, had also put this drive in my drawer. The twist was not the betrayal whispering in my ear. It was the knowledge that the architect of the theft was not just a son-in-law. It was the person who still called me Mom. The files made that clear because they showed her in every room where the money moved. She did not sound coerced. She sounded fluent. And yet she had left the drive, which meant she wanted, at least once, to be fluent in another language. My moral ground shifted under my feet like a dock at high tide. I forwarded the audio files to my attorney with a single line, "No press. For court only." I sent the ledger file to the custodian with a numeric key. I printed 2 letters, one to my daughter, one to Derek. I put them in 2 plain envelopes with their names. I put Derek's watch in my pocket. I washed my face and tied my hair back. I set a glass of water on the island and did not drink it. The locksmith finished and handed me a small bundle of shiny keys with tags that said kitchen, gate, boathouse. "Do you want the old keys back?" he asked. "No," I said. "Throw them away somewhere you will not remember." He grinned. "My specialty," he said. He left. At 1500 hours, the receivership officer called to confirm that the team would arrive at the property at 1730 with 2 marshals and a sealed inventory. "We will be respectful," she said. "We will do what the order compels, no more." "Thank you," I said. I texted Ruben, "Please pick up the children at 4:30 and take them to the museum. Ice cream after." He wrote back a thumbs up and a heart, and I pictured his quiet face reading my text like a grocery list he would get right. At 16:05 my phone buzzed with a message from a number I did not know. A single sentence: "You are being recorded in your kitchen." I looked up at the single light over the sink, at the smoke detector, at the small black near the vent I had never noticed. I unplugged the vent for show, then left the camera where it was. People who record you think they are the only ones who can see. I found a ballpoint pen and a pack of sticky notes and wrote in block letters, "Thank you, Derek, center camera," and held it up. Then I smiled. Then I kept moving. At 17:20, I heard tires on gravel and the murmur of voices working too hard to sound casual. The front door key scraped at the lock and met its new reality. The knob rattled. A pause. My doorbell rang twice. I let them ring again so they would feel it. Then I opened the door. Derek stood there in a navy polo and a tan that looked bought, with my daughter a step behind, face set to neutral, hair still sprayed from wherever they had been that smelled like sunscreen and bad decisions. My hallway framed them like a painting. Rain had stopped and left the air soft. "Keys," he said, not even a greeting. "Please." He always added please to words that should not get it. "I changed the locks," I said, and I kept my voice ordinary because people panic when ordinary wins. "We are under a receivership order." He smiled like I had tried a line he taught me. "Evelyn," he said, soft. "We talked about this. You are tired." "I am not," I said. "Come in. Wipe your feet." He walked in like he owned the floor. My daughter did not move. I looked at her. "Lena," I said, and she flinched almost invisibly. "Inside," I added, not unkind. She stepped in and closed the door behind her with a neat click. They came home, and I was waiting with a table I had borrowed from the church down the street and a stack of boxes labeled with tape, receivership papers, board resolutions, law enforcement copies, media hold. On the center of the table, a single silver service bell like the ones in old hotels. I tapped it once. The sound was cheerful and wrong, which was why I chose it. "Sit," I said, and I pointed to the 2 chairs where I had set their envelopes. They sat because people sit when you point where power is. Derek put his fingers on the envelope and then pulled them away like the paper was hot. My daughter looked at her name like it was a word she had not learned yet. The slap had a twin in that kitchen. Derek reached for the bell and dinged it with 2 fingers, his smile crooked. "Room service," he said. I stood without hurry, walked around the island, and slapped him once, clean on the cheek that had not known salt water. Motive: he had pushed me into the ocean so he could steal what my husband built with me. Contact: my palm to his face, a neat, flat sound, not a spectacle, a mark that would sting until morning and remind him that the first human institution is not profit. Aftermath: he lifted his hand and touched his cheek and looked shocked, not by the pain but by the reality that I could still reach him. Who saw? My daughter, who did not move, and 2 marshals in plain clothes at the side door who had stepped in when I nodded and who took in the room like a ledger. What changed? The part of the kitchen heir that had believed in a compromise died. "Mr. Lowell," the senior marshal said with no extra words, "you are under a temporary restraining order governing your access to these premises and to any financial accounts tied to the Hart Family Foundation and its subsidiaries. You may sit. You may not remove anything." He handed Derek a copy of the order. Derek took it with 2 fingertips like it was something he could fold into a trick. He set it down. "We will fight this," he said. "You may," I said. "You will lose." The receivership officer began her inventory with the calm of a person who likes lists. The second marshal stood by the door and checked names off a clipboard when people arrived, the bank's compliance officer, our board chair who looked like he might be sick, my attorney with a pen already uncapped, a court reporter who rolled a small suitcase in like a tourist. The room filled the way a theater fills before a show where everyone knows the last line. I slid the thumb drive from my daughter's envelope across the counter to my attorney. Derek lunged for it. The senior marshal's hand, quiet and quick, reached Derek's wrist before the lunge finished. No, he said. Derek sat back. My daughter watched the drive slide with the look of a person who sees two roads and does not want either. I recorded him, she said suddenly, voice small. In rooms where he thought there were no pictures. I did it because he did not trust anything that didn't pay him. I did it because I wanted someone to know the shape everything made. I did not do it because I love you. She put her hands flat on the table. Her nails were neat. I still did it, she said. My face did not move. Inside, a door I had kept closed opened an inch and let in air that did not smell like diesel. The receivership froze accounts that had carried our money like tributaries. The bank manager brought in 2 bankers' boxes of printed confirmations that now meant something different, lined up like soldiers who have finally been told who they fight for. The judge's order gave our board authority to install an interim financial officer with full control. We named Marta. She blinked once, then nodded in a way that said she did not like suits, but she liked integrity. Derek called 3 people in quick succession and left 3 voicemails that sounded like advertisements for a product that was no longer for sale. Jasper texted me a smiley face and a photo of a sunset. My attorney filed a criminal referral with a cover sheet that did not use adjectives. A detective called me ma'am, and I let him. 2 donors sent emails that said they trusted us more now than last week. The foundation's website stayed the same because we had not changed our mission. Only the people who thought they were the mission had changed. At 1910, the children called from the museum to say the exhibit had a model of a hurricane and a machine that made a cloud in a box. When we press the button, the fog comes out, my grandson said, delighted. It goes away if you stop pressing. That is how some things work, I said. Press it again. He laughed and I heard ice cream plastic scraping a table. Grandma, can I sleep over? He asked. Yes, I said, and I looked at my daughter, who looked at the floor. Yes, you can. Derek spent the night in his own guest room. The marshals set a watch. He was not arrested that night because law is not a television show, but he was held by time, which is worse. The board held a special session at my dining table and voted unanimous to remove him from any governance. Jasper sent a letter through council at 2100 hours that used the word vigorously twice. We ignored it until morning. My daughter left her phone on the counter and walked out back to the pool and stood there in the light like a photograph before it is printed. I joined her. You could have told me you were good at math, I said. You could have asked, she said. I did, I said. You called it criticism and then turned it into a project with someone who likes doors that lock. She nodded once. I will make a statement that owns my part, she said. I will say I helped build the structure that made the theft possible. I will tell the board I forfeited decision rights until they believe the shape I make in a room again. She looked at me. I am not asking you to forgive me. Good, I said. Forgiveness is not a performance. We stood there with the smell of wet grass and lemon cleaner and a faint curl of chlorine, and for a moment the world felt like 2 people whose mouths did not know how to speak but whose hands knew how to put dishes away in the right places. The last move came quiet at 22:30. I walked into the kitchen and rang the silver bell once. Everyone looked up because Pavlov is real. I set Derek's watch on the table and pushed it toward him. You left this behind when you committed a felony, I said. I am giving it back because I like clean tables. He opened his mouth to say a line about property. I raised my hand and he closed it. You will want to know what happens next, I said. In the morning, the detective will schedule your interview. In the afternoon, a reporter you owe favors to will pretend your voice matters. In the evening, you will be served with a civil suit. We will not speak to you except through counsel. When you tell people you are a victim of vindictive governance, they will remember the video where you put your hand at my back and do nothing while the ocean decides if I breathe. They will remember that your face did not change. He stared at me like he could pull me back into what we had been before I stopped pretending. The marshals watched him like they had watched 10 men like him this month alone. You did not factor in that I was still here, I said. You moved money like time was yours, and then it ran out. I turned to the court reporter. You got that, I said. She nodded, dry as paper. Every word, she said. I looked at the camera near the vent and smiled without showing teeth. Tell me where you're watching from.